The Bespin duel is widely considered the best duel in all of Star Wars. Let's try and analyse what makes it so great. The duel starts with Luke entering the carbon freezing chamber, blaster drawn. The darkly lit set is illuminated by a pale blue background. The blue colour reflects Luke's commitment to the light side of the Force and his belief in Yoda and Obi-Wan's teachings, while the darkness symbolises his uncertainty and lack of mastery over the situation. What has he gotten himself into? The red lights come on and we hear Vader's breathing exactly at the same time. The interplay of blue and red in the scene allude to the conflict between light and dark about to take place. We, the audience, see things from Luke's point of view, his youth and insecurity, as he turns to face Vader. He knows what he must do, confront Vader in accordance with the Jedi ways, but not whether he is ready or how the match will turn out. Luke willingly puts away his blaster, underscoring that this is a voluntary and psychological showdown rather than a straight-up fight as seen in the sequels and prequels. The two characters will be swinging swords at each other shortly, but that's only the backdrop of the exchange. First and foremost, this meeting has to do with character development and Luke's growth as a Jedi, as he matures from innocent farmhand to full Jedi Knight. That is why the first thing Vader tells him is that
the Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
We now move on to the first part of the duel. Luke ignites his saber using the quickest possible way to extend the blade and assumes his dueling position. Luke is filmed from above, underscoring his smaller size and physical inferiority compared to the towering Vader. Vader ignites his saber in a manner so that the blade comes out only very slowly and is filmed from below, making him appear more intimidating and imposing than Luke. Luke is teeming with nerves and eager to do battle, but Vader has all the time in the world. Likewise, where Luke grips his saber tightly using both hands, Vader sports a loose and elegant grip, using only one hand. Again, this underscores their relative levels of comfort and mastery over the situation. Luke is insecure, while Vader is at ease and confident. As foretold by the cinematography, Vader confidently beats Luke in the first part of the duel. Not only is Luke knocked to the floor in their first test of strength, Vader does this using only one hand, and with his arm held in a position that would normally reduce one's ability to push forcefully against the other. We the viewers understand that Vader is much stronger than Luke.
All too easy.
Luke expends more energy just to keep up with Vader. Luke gives everything he's got, but Vader expends a minimum of effort parrying the blows. Vader is the master of the situation. He toys with Luke. He just wants to see what Luke is made of. The imbalance is underscored by the dialogue, where Vader is not in the least bit insecure. He can compliment Luke and fight at the same time, whereas Luke has to psych himself up with bravado to keep giving everything he's got. When he says,
"You'll find I'm full of surprises,"
but nonetheless gets disarmed immediately afterwards. We understand his mixture of nerves, self-doubt and desperation. Was Yoda right all along? Should he have remained on Dagobah? Maybe he made the wrong decision. He is clearly facing a superior foe and there is no turning back.
Your destiny lies with me, Skywalker. Obi-Wan knew this to be true.
no.
When Luke has lost his saber and Vader is goading him into the freezing pit, we see that Luke is overcome by incredulity and despair. He has no rational reason for doubting what Vader says about his destiny lying with Vader and the Emperor. The game appears to be over. Luke was too rash and Vader has won.
All too easy.
Then we get the turnaround. Luke jumps out of the freezing pit and re-enters the fray. The smoky conditions represent his uncertainty and doubt. After Luke is told to release his anger and hatred, his blows become more fierce and difficult for Vader to parry, and Luke manages to push Vader off the edge of the freezing facility. Maybe there is hope for him after all. After a change of sets, Luke emerges to face Vader again, this time in more confined surroundings. Vader's saber is already ignited, and his blows are far more forceful now. This time it's business. Vader is losing patience with the duel and decides to make use of his superior force powers to humiliate Luke. He pummels him to the ground using Force Pull, psyching Luke to give up by showcasing his unequivocal superiority with the Force. Even if Luke should stand a chance in terms of swordplay, the Force is about so much more than that. Vader is still more powerful than him, and this is what Vader is showing him. After the next change of scenery, Vader emerges from the shadows, this time making full use of his powers. Vader has definitely lost his patience now. His rage is on full display, similarly to what we saw at the end of Rogue One. Again, Vader is shown to be much stronger than Luke, as Luke cowers and tumbles just to avoid getting cut down. The dark side predator has been unleashed, and Luke doesn't stand a chance. Like we saw at the beginning of their duel, where Vader pushed Luke to the floor using only one hand, Vader outwits Luke and pushes him to the ground again.
Don't let yourself be destroyed as Obi-Wan did.
Luke is bested and downed, and Vader taunts him, referring once more to the fate of Obi-Wan. Here, we are regurgitating the themes that we've already seen. The only question that remains for us to ponder is whether Luke will cave in and turn himself over to Vader, as Yoda had feared could happen. But Luke doesn't turn. He jumps to his feet and fights to the last. And we, the audience, are surprised when he manages to land a glancing blow on Vader. But, while we're still digesting our surprise, Vader disarms and cuts off Luke's hand in much the same way as we saw before. The surprise is immediately topped by shock. The turnaround where Luke manages to glance Vader sets us up to believe that maybe there is hope after all, if only for a few seconds. But there isn't. Luke is defeated. Now the only choice is whether to turn or be destroyed. Vader continues to goad Luke, inadvertently reinforcing the ambiguity of his motives that have been hinted at the whole movie, and which will ultimately be brought into fruition in Return of the Jedi. Does he want to turn Luke for purely subservient reasons? Has he lost all individuality during his years of service to Palpatine? Or does the father still harbour some loyalty towards his son?
He could destroy us.
He's just a boy. Obi-Wan can no longer help him. If he could be turned, he would become a powerful ally.
One of the most important, yet underappreciated parts of the duel is what Vader says once he has defeated Luke.
Luke, you do not yet realize your importance. You have only begun to discover your power. Join me, and I will complete your training. With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy.
Vader's motives have been hinted to be ambiguous throughout the whole movie. Is he a robotic stone-cold enforcer, or does he have some humanity left in him and some love for his son? Is he solely an unquestioning machine, or is there an emotive human being hidden somewhere beneath the black shell? Exactly this ambiguity was underscored earlier in Empire, when we saw Vader in his meditation chamber and got a glimpse of the broken man that resides within the armor and casing. An important element of the duel is therefore when Vader offers Luke to join him in order to defeat the Empire and rule the galaxy as father and son. Of course, the offer implies that Luke should turn to the dark side, and that is one reason why the centrality of this element of the duel is often overlooked. But these lines say a lot about Vader, since they reveal that the ruthless killer we have seen throughout the two movies actually has a level of humanity and feeling in spite of his dark side allegiance. With just a couple of lines, we get quite a lot of information about Vader, which is some very elegant storytelling. Also of note here is that Luke may hate Vader, since he has made him out to be an unequivocal bad guy in his mind, but the hatred is clearly not mutual. This sets us up to see that the young Luke's moral righteousness and willingness to do the right thing may actually turn out to be a flaw when it comes into contact with the complexity of the adult world.
You must complete the training.
I can't keep the vision out of my head. They're my friends. I gotta help them.
You must not go.
But Han and Leia will die if I don't.
You don't know that. Even Yoda cannot see their fate.
But I can help them. I feel the Force.
But you cannot control it.
Luke left prematurely and is defeated. Luke plunges himself into the depths of the pit beneath him. All hope is lost. I remember that when I first saw this ending, I thought it was a bit silly and a bit of a letdown from such a climactic experience. and perhaps it is, a deus ex machina of sorts. Vader does everything right, overpowers Luke, and puts him in a situation where he's forced to make a decision. But then Luke just happens to find a way out, which is an insult to both Vader's intelligence and the audience who were promised a showdown. As if the screenwriters could think of no better outro than that. But hey, at least it's better than the ground between Rey and Kylo conveniently cracking open in exactly the spot where it will separate and allow each of them to escape intact for the next movie, right? Anyway, the ending is not completely without merit. We all know that the original trilogy drew heavily from the so-called monomyth, that is, the hero's journey, which is a thing in comparative mythology. In the hero's journey, the hero leaves the ordinary life to embark on a journey filled with challenges that will ultimately make the hero more powerful than any normal man. On that journey, there is a stage called the Belly of the Beast stage, which represents the hero's complete and final separation from the ordinary life he left behind and his ordinary self. By allowing himself to be swallowed up by the belly of the beast, the hero signals his willingness to undergo a complete transformation from his old ordinary self and to undergo growth and become more powerful than normal men. We know this story from the biblical story of Jonah and the whalefish, of course, but we also know it from Star Wars. Or also know it already, I should say. You might not have noticed the first Belly of the Beast scene.
But your brain did.
Get in there, you big boy! I don't care what you smell! Wonderful idea! What an incredible smell you've discovered!
But wait, you might say. Didn't we just skip the biggest reveal in all of movie history? Yes. Yes, we did.
I am your father.
We skipped it because to understand the full importance of that scene, we must first say a few words about another art form.
More than any other art form I've had experience of, Greek tragedy does one particular thing, and that is look suffering and human misery directly in the face. And it can't stare it down, but it stares at it. No other art form is so unflinching about it.
Suffering, you say? At the end of Empire Strikes Back, Luke has lost a hand and been revealed to be the spawn of the Dark Sith. Han has been put into carbon freeze, not knowing whether he'll survive, and Leia doesn't know whether she will ever see the man she loves again. And Luke is so broken that he possibly tried to give up his own life by plunging himself down the pit after being defeated by Vader. The film looks suffering in the eye the way tragedy does. This must have come as a shock for audiences at the time, who had no other frame of reference for Star Wars but the giddy and optimistic A New Hope. A New Hope is a fairy tale, but Empire Strikes Back is a tragedy, which is not something that is easily pulled off in blockbuster entertainment. Rather than the joyous elevation we felt from watching A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back ends on somber notes of pity for the main characters and fearful foreboding for what is to come. Exactly the emotions that a tragedy is supposed to invoke in us. Oh yeah, and something else about tragedies.
The first really important study of Greek tragedy was by a 4th century Greek philosopher called Aristotle. And Aristotle thought for a very, very long time about what made Greek tragedy effective. And he actually came up with a formula. And that is that the heroes of tragedy needed to be good, but not so good that you sort of couldn't relate to them. People trying to be good, but making mistakes.
That's right. In the 4th century BC, some guy figured out that it wasn't very compelling to watch a drama where the main character is totally good and has no flaws. Although not all present writers of Star Wars appear to have gotten the message. But anyway, just like Luke in Star Wars, one of the most famous Greek tragedies, Oedipus Rex, has the main character go out into the world in order to right a moral wrong. And though he vows to do the right thing, he ends up causing more trouble than he abates. Not only that, though his heart has been in the right place the whole time, he discovers that his overly black and white understanding of the world has blinded him to the wrong within himself. Much like is the case with Luke.
If you end your training now, if you choose the quick and easy path, as Vader did, you will become an agent of evil.
Aristotle says that one of the key things that leads to tragedy is what he calls the hamartia, the error of judgment. And tragedy is actually about real people making bad decisions that lead to terrible results. Real people making bad decisions often for good reasons.
That's why I have to go.
R2, fire up the converters.
The plot of a tragedy exists in a state of tension between the hero's error of judgment and the catastrophe that results from it. The retribution for the hero's error is typically brought about by some collusion of exterior forces, such as fate, chance, ignorance, and necessity, which work in conjunction with the hero's tragic error to bring about his downfall. Another thing that characterizes tragedy is that the cosmic retribution should be much more severe, in fact out of proportion to the hero's initial misstep. Luke's willingness to confront Vader in the service of saving his friends, and in defiance of the admonitions of Obi-Wan and Yoda, constitutes his tragic flaw. By itself, his motivation is commendable, and the misstep is slight compared to the immense misfortunes that Luke must undergo because of it. At the point in time when Luke made the decision to go save his friends, there was no way he could have known the truth about his lineage. Thus, when Vader says,
I am your father,
the final blow of misfortune is heaped upon Luke's already battered condition. It is a perfect illustration of how the tragic retribution brought about by forces outside of the hero's control is out of proportion to the hero's initial misstep.
No. It's not true. That's impossible!
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
Thus, tragedy shows us that people can suffer while seemingly not deserving to suffer. And if the hero is relatable, we in turn relate his misfortune to our own lives. We understand that though we aim to do most things right, we inevitably end up facing adversity and difficult situations in life. Hence, the goal of tragedy is not suffering, but reflection on the human condition. By seeing someone else undergo a tragic endeavour, we intuitively understand that our power to always get the outcome we want in life is limited, and that this is what it's like to be human. When we see someone who is fundamentally good, but liable to human error, undergo the tragic experience, we understand that these conditions apply to our own life too. We see that our place in this vast universe is slight, and by seeing that, we are released from the tyranny of anxiety and self-blame, stifling emotions that it is common to undergo when things do not turn out the way we imagined in life. Our outlook on the human condition is enlarged, and we feel purged of the fearful states that are liable to impede us. We feel better able to go on and to face the hardships that inevitably lie in front of us. Filled with a bittersweet melancholy, we also experience a faint sense of hope at what is to come.